I'm Gail Rappolt, and I'm privileged to be able to speak on behalf of Culture Peace Hamilton today. Culture Peace Hamilton began in the spring of 2000. Graham McQueen, then chair of Peace Studies here at McMaster, and Joy Warner called a meeting at the First Unitarian Church to raise awareness in Hamilton to something called Manifesto 2000. So I heard about this and had no idea what it was, and it turned out that it was a UNESCO manifesto for the children and youth of the world to create a decade of peace. Not so much for nations, which is a good thing based on what the first decade of this century was like, but for communities. And the idea that peace needed to begin in the home with the person in the community. And that idea really appealed to me. So at the end they said, anybody who'd like to get involved, come up at the end and sign up and plan another meeting. So I did, and met Joy and Graham and Ray Cunnington and some other people, and I guess, you know, it's trite, but the rest is history. 13 years later, Ray and I and some others are still there. And that actually has been our goal, to develop the concept of a culture of peace in the Hamilton community. We had a very funny experience at City Hall a few years ago. A young political science student who was just hired, and we'd had a meeting with the mayor's office and various people, and he said, we know you people have a problem. You want to talk about culture and you want to talk about peace. Both of them are deep and complex. Politicians like things that are simple and transparent. I mean, it was funny, but over a decade, we've definitely learned that. So how do we get connected, reconnected with McMaster Peace Studies? We had been involved over the years doing a variety of projects. We've had a number of students from Peace Studies come to our events and help out in various ways. But in the spring of 2013, I was introduced to Dr. Nancy Doubleday, and as it turned out, how we got connected was through Ray Cunnington, who was again one of the founders of Culture Peace. And I learned that she was the person I'd heard about. The first year, a whole bunch of students from MAC showed up at the Gandhi Peace Festival. And we learned that they had been, shall I say, encouraged by Dr. Doubleday to attend. Actually, it's been lovely, because since then, hundreds of them have come every year. So what Nancy proposed was, would we be interested in having students on placement for credit? So our group had done some work with co-op students from other universities, so I was anxious to engage locally, anxious to engage with our own university here in Hamilton, and anxious to engage with Peace Studies since we'd been involved over the years. So I said yes. We wrote up some descriptions, they went back and forth, got edited, and quite unbelievably to me, as an educator inside the education system, this happened right away, a few months later. And it has been an incredibly rewarding and exciting experience. I began in May with two amazing young women, Catherine and Rachel. Very different backgrounds, very different histories, but equally committed, equally passionate, and in their own ways, just amazing young women in terms of the things they'd already done in their lives around social justice, the perspectives they brought, the kinds of questions they asked, the links they wanted to make with their learning, and again, two very different perspectives, but in Catherine's case, her interest in writing and communication and her broad international perspective was a very interesting dimension. She wrote articles that were fabulous. She connected us for the first time to the CPNN, the Culture of Peace News Network in New York. And you know, at its sophisticated level with her writing and communication skills. And then in the end of May, she came on a freezing morning and helped with the Culture of Peace yard sale. So Rachel is a local person from Hamilton. Her interest was in children and finding ways to introduce the concept of a culture of peace to young children. So she created a series of learning activities and a booklet, which I'm hoping will get introduced to the Board of Education. I've had some contact with them. It's already been used in a couple of churches and child care centers. So these young women worked hard, and I think as they wrote in their papers at the end, were able to see how the things they were learning in the classroom had application. I think they also saw what some of the challenges were. They also saw the very human face of the people who do this work out in the community. It's not all perfect. We live with our own foibles and struggles, and I think one of the hardest things for us as a group is within ourselves, each person, and with each other, managing our passion, dealing with our sadness and sometimes frustration that the world isn't changing to a more peaceful one as quickly as we'd like, and learning to live what we're now calling the 6 pathways to peace inside ourselves, with each other. It's very easy to preach about what the rest of the world should be doing. And I think this was one of the things that Catherine and Rachel, as well as the 2 students this term, Kayla and Daniela, I think have both experienced the humanity, the fact that we are less than perfect, that we can't always function the way the 6 pathways talk about. What do we do out there? Our basic role is to network and bring together City Council and people who work in City Hall, the many interdisciplinary, multi-faith, multicultural, and social justice environmental groups in the city, as well as business, to help them understand that the work they're doing, whether it be in eliminating child poverty, reducing violence against women, having a greener world, a smaller footprint, working against hatred and against race and religion, people don't necessarily grasp that if they're passionate about that and working toward those things, that they are actually working toward a culture of peace. Because unless those things are resolved, there will be no true peace. So our group is not a group that has ever seen itself as being in charge of anything or controlling anything. It's a group to enable, to encourage, to engage, to network. And so it's lovely to have a chance to do that with McMaster, particularly with President Dean's view about outreach. This is a way for us to connect and reach in. And again, at a personal level, to say that it's been inspiring to work with these young people is an understatement. yes, it is a commitment. And sometimes I think, oh, you know, I have to meet. And then I remind myself about, I never come away from one of these meetings without feeling uplifted and inspired by what the future holds. If these are examples of the young people who are our leaders for the future, we have much to look forward to.